What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another breakdown. This is the series where I analyze subscriber gameplay to help you improve. In today's episode, we're going to be analyzing a shotgun gameplay on the map Genesis from Dizzy Bonkers. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so first up, as always, let's have a look at the class he decided to use. Overall, not a bad shotgun class by any means. A laser sight is great on shotguns. The extended mags also helps, especially because he's not running Scavenger. Hailstorm Thunder, honestly I prefer other pistols when I'm running a shotgun class, but this one all comes down to personal preference, so it's great that he has something that he can use at a little bit of a range. The C4s, I don't see them used too often, but they can be very effective, especially with dexterity, so you can throw them super quickly. Ghost and Dexterity, obviously great choices. Hardline, also not a bad choice by any means, and the one thing I would say, Gung Ho, I feel is unnecessary on this class. It does help in some situations with shotguns, but with the pump action shotguns, it doesn't help you as much as it would help you with something like the Reaver or the Decimate. And the reason for this is, first off, your sprint out time is nearly unaffected. You aren't going to notice any significant difference to your sprint out time since shotguns pretty much sprint out instantly already. The only thing that it'll allow you to do is keep up your sprinting momentum as you're firing shots. And with the pump action shotguns, you still have to rechamber that shell anyways, so it doesn't help quite as much in as many situations, but it absolutely does help sometimes. Personally, I would have swapped this one out for Dead Silence. So hopping into the gameplay itself, just a couple things I wanted to mention. First up, the enemies he was playing against in this game, for the most part, weren't really all that good. There's no way really around that. One of them actually looked like he was possibly AFK most of the game. And I just wanted to point out that I do acknowledge that, I do notice that. Sometimes when I do like a breakdown video or something, people are like, oh, the only reason he did so well was because of his enemies. And yeah, it is one of those gameplays where if he had much better enemies, then it would have gone a different way. But I feel like he handled situations very well in this overall, and I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. So rewinding it a little bit and having a look at his opening route, this was a really risky move. It was great that he took this route, but holding a C4 in your hand at this point, very, very risky because this is usually where you clash with the enemies if they're being very aggressive. If it was a very aggressive enemy player, that player would have just come around the corner and been able to kill him before he could even throw his C4. So I wouldn't have kept my C4 out in that area. I would have taken that exact same route and I would have got my shotgun up and ready for somebody to come around that corner, but I wouldn't have been holding a C4 in that situation. Also, as he comes through this area right here, honestly, I probably wouldn't have checked to the right either. There was an enemy player there. Looking back, it's like, oh, he should have checked to the right. But honestly, off an opening route, who expects somebody to be sitting in that corner? Very, very unlikely that somebody would be there. There was somebody there, which kind of sucks, but he handled the situation quite well. And you can see something that's very important with shotguns here, and this is understanding how to cut off lines of sight to areas that you aren't even necessarily looking at. This comes down to map knowledge and just awareness of everything around you and knowing what you can put between you and your enemy to take cover from them without even looking at that piece of cover. It's not only just being able to find that piece of cover, it's being able to use that piece of cover dynamically, continue your movement, continue moving around the map while still cutting off that line of sight. In my mind, he handled that situation almost perfectly. Now skipping ahead just a little bit here, him and his team are somewhat trapped in this building, which can be very difficult with a shotgun because in order to push out, you have to expose yourself to a longer line of sight, where the enemy definitely has options for cover. So I like what he's doing here. He's being quite patient. It's not his moment to push out yet. And also right here, a lot of shotgun users would have just rushed out thinking, I'm going to go get these guys. I know where they are. I'm going to go get them. And they would just get themselves killed. Instead, he was patient. He let the enemy come to him. And he was able to pick off that one kill before the other guy ended up cleaning him up. Now right here, as he rotates back into this building after picking off that kill, I don't know what he was thinking with his overdrive, but he used his overdrive at a very bad time. Now it worked out just fine for him, but he had no reason to activate it as early as he did inside that building. He easily wasted half of that overdrive just because he activated it way too early. He activated it when he was in a completely safe area, and it just didn't really make much sense. He would have been much better off activating it right around here, just before he's coming around the corner. Then he would have had a lot more time with it as he's out in the open and vulnerable. Like I said though, it ended up working out for him just fine, and right after this situation where he picks up a great triple kill, he's expecting enemies to be coming through this doorway, and there's nothing wrong with being a little bit patient like this as a shotgun user. A lot of people will hate you for it, you might get some hate messages and stuff, but it's an effective strategy. As long as you're not just sitting in a random corner all game pre-aiming a doorway, I don't see any problem with this sort of technique. Also, as he's aggressive in this building, I like that he's sidestepping, he's jumping, he's doing his best to make his enemies miss their shots, and it worked out very, very well against these enemies. Now, honestly, this is where that thing comes in at the beginning of the game. His enemies weren't the best players out there. Honestly, he should have died in that situation. He was a little bit on the sloppy side, but at least he was doing something to avoid those shots and close that distance on his enemies. Now, skipping ahead a little bit later in the game, this is something I wanted to point out that's very important with pretty much every gun, but it's extremely important with shotguns in my opinion. This is centering. I've mentioned it a few times before. You guys have probably heard me talk about it if you've been around here for a while, but it's very important to keep centered. Keep your sights where an enemy could be. Right here, if he was centered properly, he would have gotten that kill, no problem. He would have survived, no problem. But because he was aiming down here where an enemy can't be, he ended up getting himself killed. It's a really simple principle, but it's very easy to develop bad habits with that and end up not centering when you should be. Now, skipping ahead later into the gameplay, this is a move that I absolutely love from him. I just thought it was pretty cool. For those of you guys that didn't know, you can actually wall run up on this area here. I love that he's doing that while he has his care package in. He could have just laid down next to it like a lot of people would have done, or sat in the corner, but I like that he threw a little bit of style in here, and it worked out very well getting that kill on the guy that was looking for him. He knew somebody had to be in the area because there was a care package coming in, but because he got creative, the guy couldn't find him. And with that, I think it's a great time to wrap up this breakdown. Some of the overall things to take away from this is always be aware of the cover that you have available to you to cut off lines of sight to people that could be on different positions on the map. Also, make sure you're keeping yourself centered, especially with shotguns. Always keep your sights up and ready to go. And finally, don't be afraid to get a little bit creative or be a little bit patient with a guy and let them come into your sights. There is no shame in doing this as long as you're not just sitting in a corner all game long. So if you guys have a gameplay that you'd like me to analyze for a future episode of this series, all you have to do is send a link to a raw, unedited HD gameplay to the email address in the description below, and I may just have a look at it in the future. One thing I wanted to say here though is please no more deatomizer gameplays. I've got literally dozens of deatomizer gameplays to pick through, and yes, every now and then I'm going to pick a deatomizer gameplay to break down, but I don't want to be doing it every episode, and I've got more than enough of those for basically the remainder of Infinite Warfare. So if you do have an HD gameplay that fits that criteria, make sure you send that link to the email address in the description. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.